Hey guys, welcome back. I'm sure any of you that might be watching this video already knows of another great loss we had in the comic community. Len Wein passed away, and as one of those guys, I always noticed the artist first when I was a kid. It was like most people in our generation did. But once I got older and I started noticing the writing credits, he was always there in like some of the favorite comics I read. I mean, of course, everybody knows he was like the co-creator of Wolverine and Swamp Thing, and I'll be showing a couple books pertaining to that. But he wrote a lot of like the mystery stories for DC that I enjoyed as a kid, and this something that a lot of people might not know is that with Marv Wolfman, he co-created the first Russian superhero, but way back in the first series of Teen Titans, number 18, he created the Red Star with Marv Wolfman. Uh, and he was like an editor on the Watchmen, and you guys, probably know most or all this stuff already. Uh, Probably the first. Well, I'll go back. The last video I did, which was my entry for Steve's 100 subscriber contest, Charlton 66, was JLA 114. Still one of my all-time favorite books. That is probably the quintessential book that got me started in collecting. And I realized later that Len Wein wrote that lead story. Well, after I started getting into the JLA, I think some of the first back issues I bought uh, were JLA stuff, which had some of his writing, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I'll go ahead and I'll show a couple books. You guys have already seen this stuff, but classic book. He and Bernie Wrightson created, or the character Swamp Thing, and and Bernie was another great loss. I'm sure to his family in the comic world, but it's just one of the Swamp Thing's just one of the many great characters he helped create or co-create, and we're going to be, all the much, I guess there's a hole left, as far as the comic community. A lot of the guys that I grew up with, as far as the writing and the stories and the art, a lot of them aren't here anymore, and it's one of those things like we didn't have internet back then, and you just saw the names, you didn't see a picture. But once the web came along and we got to see pictures of some of our icons, I mean, it really just kind of made you grow more attached to that person, even though they don't know you and you really don't know them. But it's a great loss nonetheless. But anyway, first appearance of Swamp Thing. The first issue, actually, I think the first issue of Swamp Thing that I had was number 9, and it had like another great. I couldn't find the book, but it had another great image, from Wrights and coming up out of the swamp. This is one of the 2 or 3 characters most well known for. And getting back to the JLA book, I realized later on, after I started reading that, this same guy wrote a lot of my favorite stories. And some of the first back issues that I ordered on, through a catalog were from, of course, like Robert Bell and all those guys. But I know a lot of you guys are going to remember Passaic Book Center. They always had a catalog. I know Hippie's Collectibles. I think he actually used to go up there, or maybe him and Why Not Art. I'm not sure. But anyway, a lot of those books, back issues I ordered, I wanted to get all the JLA stuff that I could. And these, I found out later that Len Wein actually wrote Justice League 100 through 114. So 114 was the first one I had. And I'm trying not to, just go on and on about this. But these books are like really special to me. And then, when I found out he was the writer, and then writer of so much of that other stuff that I loved, I just kind of thought I'd showcase the JLA stuff. It might be, there might be somebody out there that isn't aware that he wrote these books. I know if you're a JLA fan and a DC hardcore guy like I am, you'll know. But anyway, these are like some of the first back issues I ordered. Like I say, most of these were from Passaic Book Center. Had Len Wein's writing in them. But this is JLA 100. This is my original copy. It's pretty beat up. But I remember getting this for like $1. It was probably like in very fine then. But to me, I mean, this was great because I loved all the JLA, JSA team ups, and he brought back the 7 Soldiers of Victory. And of course, this is like the 100th issue celebration, and you know, he threw everybody. And this was still when the Earth 1 Wonder Woman. This is the Earth 2 version here, but the Earth 1, she was still in her Diana Rigg phase, you know, in the white jumpsuit and all that, and she hadn't rejoined the JLA, but brought her back. Metamorpho guest starred. Adam Strange, you know, one of my favorite characters, and Elongated Man, who and Zatanna, who actually weren't members of the JLA at that time, they guest starred in this too. So just about everybody you can imagine JLA, JSA associated with, and they brought back the Seven Soldiers of Victory, which is another one of my favorite teams. So just a great story, and everybody, I think every character in this story actually got featured to some point. It wasn't just like, okay, well, here's a cameo of this character or whatever. Here's my higher grade copy of that. Great Nick Cardy cover. Like all this stuff was drawn by Dick Dillon. I think over the years he probably had just like 3 or 4 inkers. I think Joe Giella did a lot of the early stuff up until, you know, probably the midway through this run I'm going to show, and then it was Dick Giordano that inked Dick Dillon and really made it shine. I think later on Frank McLaughlin. But just great books. This, let's see. Yeah, I think this actually was the first JLA back issue that I had. It was not 100, but 101. But this was the second part of that story. You know, like I say, great. Love the little heads on the sides, you know. And this is still one of my favorite covers. The Hand That Shook the World. Looks like more Nick Cardy there. But you have a lot of characters you would normally see. Like I say, Metamorpho, and you had Wonder Woman still in her white jumpsuit phase. And had a lot of, you know, all the JSA. I just loved all those. A little higher grade copy of that one. And this is the only copy I've gotten of the third part, JLA 102. Another, what I would think, iconic cover. And the third part of that story. Something also that Len Wein wrote. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was part of the unofficial Marvel DC crossover that had that involved Len Wein, I think Steve Englehart, Glynis Wein, his wife at that time. But I think this is like the second part of that unofficial Marvel DC crossover, the Rutland, Vermont parade, all that stuff. I know my buddy John, Dr. Vonchella, he's going to, because his favorite comic, Thor 207, I think it was like the third and final chapter of that story, you know. So they actually got away with doing a crossover without actually doing a crossover. So but the writers and the artists, you know, that I just talked about, were portrayed in that story. And this is actually the story where they offered the Phantom Stranger membership in the JLA. And he said, well, it's one of those deals like, well, I'll be around if you need me. And he popped up through the years in the original JLA run. So cool issue there. Issue 104 with the Shaggy Man. Okay, and got 2 copies of this one. They're both kind of beat up. Need to upgrade these. But this is JLA 105. This is the issue that Elongated Man joined. So a lot of stuff going on here in Len Wein's run on JLA. You know, you got the Phantom Stranger, you got the JLA JSA team up, the reintroduction of the Seven Soldiers of Victory. Elongated Man joins in this issue, 105. And probably my favorite of all that is Red Tornado joining the JLA. And this is one of my all-time favorite characters. So when he got introduced in Elongated Man, you know, it just kind of, the JLA was growing, and to me, it's like more characters the better. But a lot of really good characterization in this. So it's a great story. And who can forget the crossover with Earth X at the time, and the reintroduction of the Freedom Fighters. I'm not really sure if they were named back in the 40s or they were actually a team, but in this one, and I think later on in the Freedom Fighters book, they were actually named the Freedom Fighters. So another great story with the JLA, the JSA, and the Heroes from Earth X. Great cover with the Golden Age Superman. First part of that story. And here's part 2. Another iconic cover in my estimation. Got a little date stamp there. Always nice. The wrap up to that story. And here's another copy. I think this is a little higher grade. Okay. And, well, there's another copy. Anyway, this next one is a book, you know how you would read comics and you would see like an advertisement for a comic. And this is one of those ones that just really grabbed my attention. And later on I was able to obtain it. But Justice League 109, Superman coming through and say, I heard one of you JLAers are quitting and I want to know who and why. And this is the issue you find where Hawkman leaves for a while, actually. But this is one of those covers I saw in the ad, and I'm like, man, I have to have that book. And it took me a few years. And I think this is probably original copy. It's a little worn. And although this might be real, I don't know. They're both probably VG fine. But this is one of those iconic covers as a kid that I just, you got to have that book. So just more Len Wein goodness. This is my original copy of this one. I think I bought it at a yard sale or at a garage sale or something. But this is my copy of JLA 110, my original. Pretty beat up. Got a great story called "The Murder of Santa Claus, 1973." I think this was maybe one of the first appearances of John Stewart as Green Lantern in this book. Of course, this is a great one. You got a Silver Age JLA, and I don't know who's buzzing me on the phone. You got a Silver Age JLA reprint, Justice Society reprint. I probably got this book for a quarter, so that's probably one of the reasons why it looks so beat up. I think they were actually fighting the villain, the Key, in this story, 110. Let me check this real quick. Okay. Nothing important. Okay, here's my higher grade copy of that book. Just an all-around great package. Okay. This is another one of those covers that they advertise that, you just got to have that book. But yeah, I can tell this is one of the original back issues I bought. It's got somebody wrote a little date, an ink pen. I think when I got it, it actually had tape on it. But this is the JLA versus the, I guess, the Injustice League, or Injustice Gang of the World. This introduced the character Libra that was featured in Infinite Crisis. So another character for Len Wein. And more great stuff. You got Silver Age JLA, and you have a Golden Age Seven Soldiers of Victory story in this one. So for a fan of the JLA and a fan of the 100 pagers, which I became a big fan of and was finally able to complete, man, these books just have it all. And here's a higher grade copy of that one. Okay, and here we have JLA 112, the story where they're fighting a Mazo, one-man Justice League. More great reprints, more Silver Age JLA, more Seven Soldiers of Victory, and you have a Starman solo story in this one. It's either a Silver or Golden Age reprint. But another great story by Len Wein and Batman, the most anybody knows anything about Amazo and Justice League, he can duplicate all the powers of the Justice League. And it came down to Batman, the guy who didn't have any powers, actually being the one to beat him. So nice little story. Of course, now, everyone in the comics, or the way they portray the Justice League, Batman has always been the brains of the JLA. But a good little story. A better grade copy of that one. Okay. And this was one of the few, it might be the only, but one of the few JLA, JSA team overs that was told in one story, one issue. And Creature in the Velvet Cage, another great Nick Cardy cover. You see his initials down there. More Silver Age JLA, and more Golden Age Justice Society. Another little Golden Age story. But this was kind of good because they brought back a character, kind of featured Sandman from the JSA, and you find out that the Creature in the Velvet Cage is actually his sidekick, Sandy the Golden Boy, and something he had done had caused him to transform into that monster. And but a really cool little story. Another copy of that one. And this other book, I showed this in my last video, like I said. This was my original copy, JLA 114. Features some of the lesser known characters like Elongated Man and Adam, and or lesser used characters, I'll put it that way, and the Red Tornado. I think this was probably the first upgrade I bought of that. And then last video you already saw my entry for Steve's contest. So that whole run from JLA 100 through 114, one of my all-time favorites, and just a great run by Len Wein. There's a whole lot of really good characterization and action in those stories, and I can go on, and I know people are going to have their own tributes to him, but a great loss, I'm sure, to his family and friends, and another one that I won't get to meet. So great loss to the community, but we can always go back and we can enjoy the stories, guys. So anyway, I hope everybody's enjoyed this, and thanks for watching. Onward and upward.